Physical games are dying. Well, not really, they're kinda dying. So recently Best Buy has officially announced that they'll be discontinuing all sales of DVDs, Blu-rays, and Ultra HD Blu-rays beginning early next year. This will count for both in-store and online. To say I wasn't very happy with this news would be a very big understatement. But anyways, while this move is only going to affect physical media for TV shows and movies, I want to talk about the topic of physical media for video games. Because yeah, if Best Buy is already discontinuing physical sales of TV shows and movies, I think it's safe to bet on who will be next towards the guillotine. I think I have already brought up my opinion towards physical media towards video games, especially for the few of you who may have watched my Black Friday video during the infancy of my channel, but to make it crystal clear to all of you, I am a big supporter of physical media. This counts for pretty much all of my entertainment: video games, movies, TV shows, and occasionally even music. Being able to own any piece of media in a form of a disc or a cartridge is not only appealing because of its collectability, but also incredibly comforting. Because I know for a fact that when I get a physical copy of a video game, I can keep it and enjoy it for pretty much as long as I own it. Most of my favorite games are not readily available on modern game platforms. Sometimes it's because of limitations of certain hardware, and sometimes it's just companies being stupid, like Nintendo not including Mario Galaxy 2 in the 3D All-Stars collection. But thanks to most of these games having physical releases, they can still be enjoyed for generations with the appropriate hardware, even if these games were to theoretically never be re-released again. And hey, one can back up a game's files on their computer, and with the appropriate emulator, these games can then be preserved and be played for much longer, even beyond the physical release. And hell, one can even put those game files online and then everyone can enjoy them. I don't suggest you do that yourselves, it's kind of illegal, but hey, thanks to those people, Mario Galaxy 2 is now safely preserved. This goes for pretty much most physical releases for video games. When you buy physical, you simply own that game for as long as you keep it. So yeah, physical games are great. So now let's talk about why they're pretty much at risk of dying. Uh-oh, something stinks right now, and I think I know why. It's because we're about to talk about the 8th generation of gaming, the generation that pretty much marked the beginning of the end of physical games. I think many of you would remember when Microsoft tried to kill the concept of playing used physical games on the Xbox One. They did end up retracting that, but still, yikes. But really, I think the way physical game discs were handled during this generation ended up playing a big role as to why many started to stop buying games physically. So before the 8th generation, when you bought a physical game disc, you would simply insert it into the console and it would just be ready to play. No necessary downloads were needed, just insert, console reads it, then plays it. But that was changed during the 8th generation of gaming. With the exception of Wii U, the way a physical game would work on an 8th gen gaming console was that you'd insert the disc into the console and then you wait for the game to download onto the console, and after the download is complete, your game is ready to play. There's a common misconception that the discs for 8th gen games don't actually come with the game and are instead just glorified download keys, but that's not exactly true. For the most part, you can set your game console offline, insert the disc, and the game will still download and play regularly. It does vary on which game is on the disc and also on which console you're on, but for the most part, physical games during this generation generally still do contain the game on the disc. As for why this change was done by the console manufacturers, it most likely has to do with making sure the games run at the best possible performance and also probably to reduce console noise. It's why your PS5 disc drive is only ever loud whenever you insert a game disc. It's just verifying if you do have the game, and if it's already downloaded onto your system, it just remains quiet afterwards. So yeah, physical games during the 8th generation still had the games on the disc, you just had to install the game onto the console to play them. And I do think that doing this was what made people stop buying games physically and started purchasing them digitally. Because I'm sure at least a handful of people saw all of this and thought, well, if the game is just going to install into my console and not play right away, why don't I just buy it digitally? It would be quicker and more convenient. And yeah, that's the other reason why digital games took over, it's convenient. If there is one thing I learned from how people consume entertainment, it's that they'll always take the more simple and convenient option. It's why many people now watch movies on a streaming service rather than watching them on DVDs, or why many people listen to new albums on Spotify rather than on CDs. Convenience is everything. And yeah, I won't lie, getting games digitally is super convenient. Not needing to swap the disc when you want to play a new game, getting digital pre-order bonuses, getting to play a game the second it officially releases, and a recent one being Xbox's quick resume feature. Being able to essentially pause and save multiple games at once so you can seamlessly hop between them without any of them suspending is the coolest feature in any modern game console. Like, no, really, it's the main reason why I only play my multiplat on Xbox now and I only use my PS5 for exclusives. So yeah, I see the convenience of digital, but my heart and priority is still physical. It's just fun to have a game you love in the form of a physical, tangible object. And yeah, back to the topic I brought up before, its preservation is what keeps me from continuing to buy physical. As cool as the benefits are to getting games digitally, all of the games sold under most digital storefronts are doomed to just disappear one day. Whether it be delistings or the digital storefronts themselves shutting down, the games you love on these these digital storefronts are always at risk of being gone one day. And when that does happen, the ability for others to obtain that game and play them for themselves will be gone with it. And yeah, you can see why this would never be a problem with physical releases, as I covered the reasons why. It's completely local, it's not tied to a digital storefront, it can be backed up and preserved somewhere else, it's just incredibly reliable. But even with the reliability of physical games, digital games have become the more popular choice to obtain games during the generation, and now we are seeing many examples of how physical games are now pushed to the side. First, we got Microsoft, who sold a digital-only 8th gen console called the Xbox One S all-digital model, also known as the SAD model, fitting name honestly. Then we have the digital-only 9th gen consoles, the Xbox One S and PS5 all-digital edition. Then developers started to actually not include the full game onto their physical releases. A Nintendo Switch physical release is cool until you see this blurb at the bottom left, ruins my day honestly. Then there's Alan Wake 2, which is getting notoriety as a late for being a big name game to get a release on digital but no physical release. And here we are now, Best Buy is now axing their sales of DVDs and Blu-rays, which naturally means that physical games are now most likely next on the chopping block, and possibly soon. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear now that physical games are more or less dying based on how they are now versus how they were only just a decade ago. I say more or less because even though we will see support for physical games dwindle more and more as time goes on, I don't think we'll ever get to a point where they'll be completely gone. Because of the amount of people who enjoy obtaining physical games as a preference or for collecting purposes, I feel like there's always going to be enough demand for publishers to still put their games on physical. We may see the days where long video game aisles in stores become smaller and smaller, but there will always be enough people who will still keep buying physical games. It's this reason why even though the format is nearly 30 years old and was sort of replaced by a newer format, new movies and TV shows still see releases on DVD. The demand is still there. I'm hoping that the game publishers themselves will still offer a way to sell their games physically long into the future, even if the time comes where physical retailers may stop supporting them. Hopefully they can still offer them on online retailers, or maybe give the publishing rights to other distributors. Just as long as it isn't limited run games. Please. I don't want physical game sales to be limited releases, and I especially don't want to wait for my games to ship to my home 2 years after I order them. So yeah, physical games are dying, but only in the eyes of the general public. I'm feeling optimistic that even if the concept of buying a video game on disc becomes something incredibly niche, it will still be an option nevertheless for years to come. Oh, and if the day comes where publishers just straight up stop supporting physical, then let me just say, please lower your game prices. I'm only giving them the benefit of the doubt by saying that 4K Blu-rays are expensive to produce, but that said, video games should not cost this much money. Especially yours. You'd honestly have to pay me $70 to play that crap.